As-Salamu Alaikum. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah. Nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh. Natubu ilayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa sayyiati a'malina. Man yuhdihillahu fala mudilla lahu, man yudlil fala hadiya lahu wa murshida. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. All praise is due to Allah. We praise Him and we seek help from Him. We ask forgiveness from Him, we repent to Him, and we seek refuge in Him from the evil of our own deeds. Anyone who has been guided by Allah is indeed guided, and anyone who has not been guided by Allah will find no one to guide him. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha haqqa tuqatih wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. O you who believe, be aware of Allah with correct awareness and die not except in a state of Islam. Dear brothers and sisters, anytime you are asked to be in this position, you can never quite decide what to say. The way things are now, however, there's always a natural topic, and that deals with our youth, the young people, our children. We're looking out on the people here today, our brothers and sisters. There are some old enough to be my fathers. There are some young enough to be my sons, and there are others young enough to be my grandsons. And especially for the younger ones, there's a great deal of concern. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Compassionate. I seek refuge in Allah from misleading and from being misled. I seek refuge in Allah from ignorance, the ignorance of others and the ignorance of myself. When we hear surahs like Wal Asr, Inna al-insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. And we let these things, we hear them so often, we sometimes just say them out of rote. But when we think of our young people, this is the characteristics that we want to see manifested in them. Our young people, we have almost thrown them away when we allow them to go to public schools or private schools. Doesn't matter if you pay more money, you're basically getting exactly the same thing. When we think in terms of ethics, developing sincerity in a human being, when we talk about having compassion and gentleness and humility, these things that come from the Prophet Muhammad, not only are they not taught in the schools, the opposite is taught. If you will bear with me for just a moment, I'll try and explain some of what I mean. A man named Horace Mann is credited as the father of American public school system. He studied a wide variety of educational models before implementing the Prussian system. What had happened was when Prussia was crushed by Napoleon Bonaparte, they realized they had to do something with their men to make a stronger army. Not general students, not intellectuals. They wanted an army. They wanted robots. They wanted something that would move when told to move, sit when they were told to sit, and understand that you're a captain, you're a corporal, all you can do is clean the latrines. They established a school system in that process, and that school system was brought here and implemented. Man chose the Prussian model with this depersonalized learning and strict hierarchy of power because it was the cheapest and easiest way to teach literacy on a large scale. This system was perpetuated throughout the early 20th century by social efficiency theorists. They wanted to structure the nature of human beings. When we talk about bullying, bullying is no longer a term. Bully strips the very life from young human beings and destroys them from school to home. I was bullied when I was young. Many people were bullied. But now they bully you not only in the school and between there and home, they bully you on the internet. You can't escape. Young people are taking their lives because they can find no peace on this world at a very young age. This is not an accident. This is the very nature of the developmental stages of the school system that was implemented from Prussia. When our children go through the school process, two things among many are stripped away. Two things are stripped away. One of the things that they lose is they lose a sense of the history of anything except Europe. Anything that isn't European is of absolutely no value. It's a tragedy that when we sit here with our brothers and sisters from Somalia, and from Sudan, from Niger, from Congo, from Ivory Coast, when we see them, everyone says, he's an African. African. When African Americans are being discussed, African American Muslims. There's no other Muslim on earth in any society who goes through all these sub-identifications before you get to Muslim. Never say Indian Asian Muslim. Never say Egyptian, Middle Eastern Muslim. African, American, Muslim. Now Muslim. This structure of dividing us all into parts and pieces, teaching our children some very dangerous things that we allow. The Quran tells us, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, وَقَرَ الشَّيْطَانُ قُضْيَ الْأَمْرُ. Satan will say, goes on to say, Allah gave you the promise of truth. You knew what you're supposed to do. You listen to me. We send our children and throw them away and allow other people to teach them about us. So now the situation has developed, a very dangerous one. When Muslim children hear the word terrorist, they only think it must be a Muslim. Our fault. We have people of age here, from India, from Syria, from other parts of the world. Have you told your children and grandchildren what the French did to the Algerians? Have you told your children, if you're from India or Pakistan, what the British did to their great-grandparents? The butchery, the torture, famine, starvation, withholding food when it was there, and watching women and children starve to death. If our children are taught the proper history, Flint does not become an anomaly. They've done Flint in India, Algeria, Congo. Leopold butchered 15 million in just the Congo alone. These things happened not to Africans. It happened to those of the Congo. It happened to those of Ivory Coast. It happened to those of Algeria. We allow another people to teach our children about us. About us. They've erased our great-great-grandparents from the history books, and they teach the history they want to teach, and we allow them. The society is rapidly changing. Its effects are felt by no group more so than the children. This society now is going upside down. 5 years ago, homosexuality was one thing. Now our young children see men marrying men, women marrying women. It's not right, it's not wrong, they don't know what to think. Those coming from spiritual backgrounds, Christians, Muslims, not just Muslims, but those who come from spiritual backgrounds in their family, how are they supposed to react? They've been taught that certain things were not right. The rate of change evolves in a dizzying frenzy. One of the things that's very disturbing is that pornography is masquerading as television programming. The programs that come on our TV programs, it is pornography. The internet has now opened up full-scale pornography to our children. And it's an international epidemic. Astaghfirullah, but I wanted to find out what this pornography was. Because when I was a young man, we used to try and get little magazines and things like that. The pornography now is not that. They have taken the Marquis de Sade, one of the sickest and filthiest early European authors, and they have married it to human sexuality. You get images of Beyonce discussing her life with her husband for young girls to absorb. And this is music. This is not Nat King Cole. This is not the Temptations. It's not the Parliaments. It's no form of music that even the oldest of us have ever even thought of or heard of. The structure itself is destroying our children. If we buy them games, that are games that have violent images of violence, women, all these things in their hands to play with. They have laws to stop drinking of alcohol for young people, but they've gotten around it now by allowing them to legally drink extremely powerful energy drinks, which are destroying their bodies. Maybe even more so than alcohol. Drinks that attack their hearts, lungs, liver, nervous system. The tragedy is, I didn't need a vitamin until I was past 50. These young people need energy drinks, and they're not even in middle school yet. This is an awful thing. This is the society that we've allowed to teach our children. There has to be a way for us to come together and put together Islamic schools and education. As the society corrodes, this attacks our children's psyche in such a way. This bombardment of the most graphic, awful movies. A science fiction movie used to be a science fiction movie. There again, a long time ago when I was growing up. But now everyone has to incorporate deviant sexual acts. All these movies now masquerading with rape and everything else in them. When our children go to higher education, the higher education is priced so out of target that many of these young people will remain in debt for years to come. Many, because of incurring other debts as they go along, will never get clear of debt. They will put an amount in their educations that they can't get a job to pay back. Now they're stripping away insurance. They'll have to pay for insurance. The society that our children are growing into, they should know what this system is. When we hear about the Muslims and they are targeting Muslims and immigrants, it's like, wow, this is terrible. In the 1850s, they had a group in this country called the Know Nothing Party. The Know Nothing Party was anti-Catholic and anti-immigrant. They did exactly the same thing to the Catholics that you want to do to the Mexicans and Muslims now. They wanted the Irish Catholics out of this country. That ended in 1854. Then, not too many years later, all of a sudden they claimed these people called anarchists are throwing bombs. They may have been, but there's a good chance the ones throwing the bombs were the ones that arrested the anarchists. That spurred also an anti-immigrant movement. This country has produced many anti-immigrant movements against Catholics, against Irish, against Jews. Since the African American did not come here as an immigrant, his campaign against the African American has never, ever stopped. Has never stopped. These things that come up individually about other people have been a way of life. You can drive 1 mile over the speed limit and wind up dead. This is an awful thing. But this is a society our children are growing up in, but they're not being told because they're not being told the history of these things. One of our Muslim ancestors from Timbuktu wrote the following 600 years ago. I've mentioned this sometimes. Whoever does not inform his children of his grandparents has destroyed his child, marred his descendants, and injured his offspring till the day he dies. Whoever does not make use of his ancestry has muddled his reason. Whoever is unconcerned with his lineage has lost his mind. Whoever neglects his origin, his stupidity has become critical. Whoever is unaware of his ancestry, his incompetence has become immense. Whoever is ignorant of his roots, his intellect has vanished. Whoever does not know his place of origin, his honor has collapsed. It is an awful thing for the children who come from an extraordinary people in India, in Malaysia, Indonesia, Congo, South Africa, can cling to a word like terrorism and think it began in the 20th century and the people who created it were Muslims. The way language works, if this does not abate and is not stopped, in 20, 25 years, Webster will no longer need to use the word terrorism. He'll only have Muslim. This is an awful situation for our children to grow up into. So when they go to these schools and not to a school established by Muslims, through a homeschooling process, through a school process whereby the children come to a collective area and stay together and overseen by Muslims, where they are taught all the basics, but also Islamic studies. When we talk about Asr is an amazing thing because it reminds them not to be associating with people who don't teach those 5 basic things. But it doesn't say non-Muslims because unfortunately our young also fall prey to those who are Muslims. Those who have adopted different things. Many of us come from a different background. We were not born Muslims. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not bless us like He did many of you to have our families and grandparents and great-grandparents as Muslims. We became Muslims sometimes late in life. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not neglect us. He gave us a different education. It's a blessing and a curse. Because sometimes we can look and we can see through the jalabiyas and the kufis and we see the same rap we saw 45 years ago in the clubs. The same one. Only difference is he gains access to our heart now, a distance he could never have penetrated before, by saying As-Salamu Alaikum. And for all of us, that has its effect. For all of us, no matter what we think we see, all of a sudden we love our brother. I sometimes say we love our brothers for the sake of Allah, but we like or dislike them for our own reasons. Our children fall prey to some of these ones who dazzle and who want to be followed. They get bad information, destroy their families, because they don't have critical thinking, and they don't learn critical thinking because of the school system we've put them in, which has no intentions of anybody learning critical thinking. It's not necessary to think. Dear brothers and sisters, the reason I have mentioned those different things collectively because they're all collective. One of the structures in the educational system is this process of dividing everything up. English, social studies, grammar, mathematics, and the children move through one room or another, and they're graded A, B, C, and D, and that's not the way life is lived, and that's not the way things will be taught. Every class should include geography. If you learn about mathematics, it should include biography. Who are the ones who establish these principles? Our children get to the universities, and all of a sudden they are just overwhelmed with these amazing philosophers. Schopenhauer, Kant, all these amazing people, Hegel. But we should have prepared them before they got there. You'll learn about Hegel. These are the ones that said racism and the eugenics movement. These are the ones that created eugenics in America and the Holocaust in Germany. And these are the ones who justified the butchering of your grandparents. They should never ever encounter these European philosophers and let them hide behind their philosophy. So one of the things we want to develop in our children through the educational system, through us being there with them, and you must catch them at an early age. You can't wait many times until they're 13, 14, and 15. Sometimes the damage has been done. They must learn not to bully, not because some teacher says that's not nice and lets it go on, They must learn not to bully because they have a personal sense of what humanity is and not wanting to injure someone else. Their understanding of bullying must come from the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who told them not to take advantage of people, not to laugh at people. The person you're laughing at may be better than you. These are the origins of what must come to them and become their ethics. They must have a personal sense of happiness and honor that they are people of truth. Al-Amin. They must be people of truth. They must know about their prophet being a person of truth that people trust him. I try and tell the young people that come through my contact that you never want to lie in front of your friends, because now you establish in front of your friends and your brothers and sisters, I'm a liar. A liar doesn't lie sometimes. He lies whenever it's convenient, whenever it's expedient. You identify yourself to your friends, associates, brothers, and sisters as a liar. Lying is taught in the schools. All of us now following any kind of political system, Republican, Democrat, Independent, if you don't understand that when you pull that lever, there are reasons, most certainly, to vote for one over the other, but they're all liars. Liar is the coin of the realm. Telling the truth drifted away from this process many, many years ago. Lying is a part of the system, part of the structure. As best we can, and that comes into the struggle. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said all of us were meant to struggle, toil. And it's not easy to take your children from a public school situation and try and find an alternative situation where you have to take them or work with them on a computer. It's another form of struggle. And everybody in this room, everybody in every masjid and church in this country, everybody who's not a religious person, the game is set up so you want to struggle from cradle to grave. It was meant for us to work ourselves silly, to be under a constant state of stress, to see our children decide they're not going to be Muslims anymore. I remind our brothers and sisters, I remind myself that if we don't get a hold of our children and take responsibility for them and begin to teach them ourselves, the young children, our children will exit the house with a very weak Assalamu alaikum, but our grandchildren will return and say, hi, Grandpa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may guide our children to be the best of Muslims. Amen. They may grant them paradise. Amen. Inshallah. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala kareem muslimin, wa ala Allahi nasbihi ajma'in. Dear brothers and sisters, one of the things we want, when I mentioned Asr, time is an awful thing to waste. Terrible, we all know that. I sometimes try to tell you, the young brothers and sisters that I speak to, the years will pass by before you know it. You're 10 years old, all of a sudden you're 20. Sometimes at times seems as if you went to sleep and the memories were poured in your ear while you slept. You remember them, but you can't somehow believe it happened. You can't believe that our babies are now 25. We can't believe that our children are having children. Time is a mystical, magical thing for the human being. So I tell the young people, don't take it for granted and don't waste it. Also, our children have to be taught how to make use of their time. They can't, I sometimes remind them, a Muslim should never ever have somebody ask him, what are you doing? And him say, nothing. Just hanging out, just watching, nothing, just sitting here. A Muslim should always, as a philosopher named Hitch once said, have each day as if you planned it. Have each day like you had something to do that day. And if you don't have anything to do, it's because you didn't set something up. No, you should never go to bed without some plan for tomorrow. May not get tomorrow, but we should go to sleep as if we know tomorrow is coming. For our children, they need to be taught how to plan their time in increments. You don't waste a minute of it. Nothing's more precious than it. And when it's over, it's over. Omar Khayyam said that neither your piety nor your wit will cancel a single line of it. Once it's done, and there's nothing you can do for another moment. We have to try and teach our children to live your lives in such a way that you don't have to look in the rearview mirror of your life, as many of us do, and see the tragedies that you've left behind. Don't get married before you're ready to be a husband. When you become a husband, you have no boys. You have no basketball hoops to shoot. You've shot them all. You have no people to hang out with and play chess with. Your last move in that area should have been made. You got 4 places to be: home, your gymnasium if you take care of your body, work, and your place of worship if you're a spiritual person. You don't hang out. Now you have to, once married, begin on the role of being a father, because that will come next. Our children must be taught how to be good parents, good husbands. All Muslims know that the first teacher of a child is the mother. But we say these things and move right on. Honor the womb that bore you. That doesn't mean honor your mother. You can't honor your mother, the womb that bore you, if you disgrace a child's mother in front of him or her. All these things must be thought about before becoming a husband. The groundwork for this is laid in school. How to speak to one another. How to respect those people who appear to be weaker than you are, slower than you are, not as bright, different colors, different language, different accents, stutter. All these things should be learned there. Now we move out from there. But every minute should be taught as being very precious. In 1 minute, you can recite Surah Al-Ikhlas 20 times. You can read 1 page of the Book of Allah in 1 minute. You can memorize a short ayah of the Book of Allah in 1 minute. In 1 minute, you can call a friend that you may have lost relations with because of some anger and apologize. One of the things that many of us learn late, few things are so important to break relations with someone. In 1 minute, you can call a relative who may not have anybody to talk to and talk to them for a while. In 1 minute, you can read a page from a good book. All of our children should have their own Quran in the house. Not the family Quran, or when they get ready to go to it, maybe someone else is reading it. Every one of our children should have his own Quran in the house. Every day that we don't read the Quran at least once is a bad day. Any day our children don't read the Quran at least once is a bad day. Our children should also be taught to establish some form, not by us beating them over the head, but by watching us have some kind of a regimen. Read the Quran a certain time, read the Seerah of the Prophet a certain time. Our children must have a living relationship with both the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He cannot just be the name of a prophet. It cannot just be something that we say, this is your prophet. He's not their prophet unless we have a relationship and understand the extraordinary human being that he was. There again, we go back to history. The prophet was born in 570, and that becomes a thing of rote. We say it, teach it to the children, ask them, when was the prophet born? They tell us, and we give them a little hand of applause. In 525, they were crystallizing Christmas as the birth of Jesus. A few years later, they solidified the papacy. The Roman Catholic Church said the Pope will reign on this planet, and this will be his seat, the papacy. In Persia, the Zoroastrians were being established by the Persians as the rulers of the Middle East. Persia had its own plans for who would rule. Little do they know, the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he explains